Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into something today. Pretty relatable, I think, anxiety addiction and, those coping mechanisms we maybe lean on a little too hard sometimes.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But here's the twist. We're going to be looking at all this through the lens of religious teachings and personal stories.
Really interesting to see how, ancient wisdom can apply to, modern struggles.
For sure.
We'll be unpacking a conversation with a rabbi. He's talking to a woman struggling with anxieties and addiction, smoking specifically.
Okay.
And he uses real-life anecdotes to kind of bring these concepts to life.
So I got to be honest, I was a bit skeptical at first, but this rabbi's perspective honestly totally shifted my thinking on anxiety. It's not about erasing those feelings.
Yeah.
It's about understanding them, working with them, and maybe even using them to our advantage.
Yeah, that's key, right?
Yeah.
We often just try to make those negative emotions go away.
Right.
But the rabbi says we need to understand why they're harmful.
Yeah.
He explains that they drain us of the energy we need for everyday challenges.
Totally.
Think about a time you felt super anxious. Did even simple tasks feel impossible?
Oh, absolutely. When my anxiety is bad, even answering emails feels like climbing Mount Everest.
Oh, wow.
My brain is just in overdrive. I can't focus on anything else.
Yeah, and there's the science behind it too.
Right.
Stress hormones like cortisol actually mess with our brain function, impact our energy levels and, decision making and all that.
So it's not just in our heads.
No, it's a physical thing too.
So then what's the antidote?
Yeah.
The rabbi talks about positive emotions not just being enjoyable, but actually fueling us to tackle those hurdles.
It's about finding that deeper purpose, the why behind what we do.
I like that.
Think about it this way. It's the difference between forcing yourself to go for a run because you should versus feeling that runner's high because you genuinely enjoy it and it helps you reach your fitness goals.
Okay. Yeah, I get that.
That's intrinsic motivation.
Right.
The kind of fuel that keeps us going even when things get tough.
And this is where the rabbi's perspective on anxiety really blew my mind.
Oh, yeah.
He calls anxiety a privilege.
I know, right? It's pretty mind-blowing.
It is.
He's saying that experiencing anxiety is a sign that God or a higher power believes you can handle it.
Okay.
It's not a punishment. It's a challenge to overcome and grow from.
So instead of viewing anxiety as a weakness, it becomes a sign of your strength and potential.
Exactly. Psychologists call this cognitive reframing.
Oh, interesting.
It's about changing how you see a situation.
Okay.
You're not denying that it's difficult,
Right.
but you're finding a more empowering way to approach it.
It's like looking at a mountain from a different angle. You're still facing that same challenge, but the perspective makes it feel less daunting.
Totally. And the rabbi even tells this story about a man who kept fainting.
Oh, wow.
Because he was convinced he'd lost everything. Turns out his anxieties were based on, false assumptions.
It's crazy how much our perception can impact our reality.
It really is.
We might be dealing with the same stuff, but
Yeah.
how we interpret it makes all the difference.
And that leads us to the rabbi's view on addiction.
Okay.
He doesn't see it as a moral failing, but as misdirected energy looking for an outlet.
It's like a river that needs a proper channel.
Yeah, like that.
If the energy is blocked or doesn't have a healthy way out,
Right.
it overflows and causes damage.
Exactly. The rabbi emphasizes channeling this energy into something positive. He gives this example of an artisan who, even under the influence, could focus on his craft and find peace in it.
That makes me think of the concept of sublimation in psychology. It's
Ah.
basically redirecting those potentially harmful impulses into something acceptable or even beneficial.
Right.
If you're really angry, instead of lashing out, you could channel that energy into a workout.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
all about finding those healthy outlets.
Yeah.
And speaking of urges, get ready for a bit of a controversial twist. The rabbi dives into marijuana use.
Now, this is where I got curious, because unlike tobacco, which is forbidden in the Torah,
Yeah.
the rabbi points out that marijuana isn't. He even admitted to trying it when he was younger.
Right. But the key point is he's not saying you should or shouldn't use marijuana.
Okay.
He's raising awareness about its potential for mental distortion.
Got it.
It's a reminder that even things that might have some benefits can be problematic if you're not careful.
So he's not giving a black and white answer,
No.
but encouraging us to think critically about individual responsibility
Exactly.
and awareness with any substance use.
He does share that in his experience, only someone with exceptional self-control and a clear purpose could truly master its effects.
Interesting.
Like a rabbi, he says.
Okay.
So he's really emphasizing intention, understanding the risks, and being mindful of how it affects you personally.
Which goes back to his earlier point about channeling energy effectively.
Yeah.
It's not just about what we do, but why we do it.
Totally. And this idea of controlling urges and making conscious choices leads to the rabbi's next point about keeping our minds engaged.
Okay.
He has this powerful analogy. He compares an empty mind to a well full of venomous creatures. He's saying that if we don't actively fill our minds with positive things and knowledge for the baird, those negative thoughts and urges can take over.
It's like we need to create a healthy mental environment.
Exactly. Like we wouldn't put junk food in our bodies.
Right.
We shouldn't put junk thoughts in our minds.
So it's about being selective
Yeah.
with what we let into our mental space.
Learning new things, having meaningful conversations, even pursuing creative hobbies.
Right.
These are all ways to keep those venomous creatures away.
And the rabbi tells this captivating story about two friends who immigrated to America.
Oh, yeah.
They were both devoutly Jewish, but one of them started making small compromises to fit in, like changing his headwear to something less traditional.
I'll see where this is going.
Yeah, it's like a slippery slope.
Totally.
Those seemingly harmless compromises can lead us away from our values.
Exactly. 20 years later, that friend had completely abandoned his religious practices.
Wow.
But the other friend, the one who stayed strong,
Yeah.
he was still living by his beliefs.
That's wild. And you know what's interesting?
What's that?
The rabbi points out that even the friend who stayed true to his faith
Yeah.
still felt tempted to compromise.
Oh, wow.
He just chose to fight those urges instead of giving in.
It's a good reminder that even the most disciplined people face those internal struggles.
Totally.
It's about recognizing those negative pulls and choosing a different path.
So what does all of this mean for us?
Well,
It seems that the rabbi is saying we all have these internal battles going on.
Yeah.
And it's about being more aware of which voices we're listening to and which urges we're giving power to.
exactly. It's about taking ownership of our well-being.
And that takes conscious effort.
He does.
It's not about never having negative thoughts or urges.
Right.
It's about building the tools to manage them effectively.
Absolutely. It's a journey of self-discovery and growth.
Now, before we move on to part 2, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Think about the story of those two friends.
Yeah.
Which one do you identify with more? Are you the one constantly battling those temptations? Or have you maybe made some compromises and are looking to get back to your core values?
It's a great question to reflect on. Helps us figure out where we are on our own journeys and what steps we might need to take to live a more fulfilling life.
Absolutely.
So much to think about.
For sure.
Yeah, it's a journey for sure. Not about reaching some endpoint,
I
but just making progress.
I love that. And I keep thinking about that analogy of the empty mind and those venomous creatures.
Oh, yeah. That one's hard to forget.
It's so vivid.
It really gets the point across, though, right?
Yeah.
Knowledge and good influences are so important for keeping those negative thoughts away. It's like having a mental shield. Exactly. Yeah, and that shield can be anything, really.
Yeah.
Like a thought-provoking book or a deep conversation with someone,
For sure.
or even like losing yourself in some creative project.
Right. It's all about being mindful of what we're taking in. You know, just like with food.
Yeah, totally. We need to nourish our minds with good stuff, things that lift us up.
And the rabbi tells this story about a father and his rebellious son
Uh-huh.
to show how, like, unchecked desires and lack of self-control can lead us down a bad path.
Oh, wow.
It's a warning for sure.
Yeah.
And it shows how our choices can affect others, you know?
Right. Like ripple effect.
Exactly. Like those small decisions we make, especially about controlling our urges,
Yeah.
they can have a huge impact later on.
It's like that saying, a stitch in time saves 9.
Mm.
If we deal with things early on, whether it's unhealthy habits or negative thoughts,
Right.
it's easier than trying to fix them later.
So this is all really insightful, but
Yeah.
how do we actually use this in our own lives?
That's the big question, right?
It's one thing to hear these stories, but
Yeah.
how do we turn them into action?
I think it starts with being self-aware,
Okay.
paying attention to our thoughts and feelings and actions, noticing the patterns that lead us to anxiety or unhealthy coping mechanisms.
The rabbi talked about tracking your emotions throughout the day.
Yeah, like writing down which ones are most prominent.
Exactly. It's like getting to know yourself better.
Totally. And understanding what triggers those negative spirals.
Okay, so let's say we've figured out our triggers.
Yeah.
What's next?
Then it's about finding ways to manage them.
Got it.
Could be mindfulness techniques or cognitive reframing,
Right.
or even just finding healthier ways to deal with that pent-up energy.
So like channeling those intense emotions into something creative or
Yeah.
physical, like hitting the gym or writing music.
Exactly. Finding activities that really engage us and, fit with our values.
Yeah, you got it.
things that give us a sense of purpose.
So it seems like a lot of this comes down to making choices.
It does.
And those choices aren't always easy.
No, especially when we're tempted with things that feel good in the moment,
Right.
but ultimately take us further from our goals.
It's about realizing that real freedom comes from having control over our choices.
Exactly. Not being controlled by our urges.
And those urges might never go away completely,
True.
but we can learn to manage them.
Yeah, that's the key.
And that story about the two friends really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah?
It shows that making those good choices isn't always simple.
Right.
There will always be temptations and challenges.
But we can resist them, you know,
Right.
and choose a better path. It's so much easier, though, when you have support,
That's true.
people who encourage and support those healthy choices.
And don't forget about knowledge.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The rabbi was really clear that a well-stocked mind
Yeah.
can protect us from those venomous creatures of negativity.
Like having a mental arsenal.
Exactly. The more we know and the more perspectives we have,
Right.
the better equipped we are to deal with those destructive thoughts.
And remember, those insights don't have to come just from religious teachings.
For sure.
It could be psychology, philosophy, science, art, even our own experiences. The key is to be open to learning
I like that.
and actively seek out knowledge that speaks to us.
It's about being curious and engaged.
Totally. Always looking for new ideas and perspectives.
And you know what else can be super helpful?
What's that?
Sharing that knowledge with others.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
The rabbi said that teaching and sharing can actually strengthen our own understanding
Yeah.
and also benefit the people around us.
It's a win-win.
Exactly. The more we give, the more we receive.
And by sharing our knowledge and experiences,
Right.
we're not only helping others, but we're also like deepening our own commitment to those ideas.
It creates this awesome cycle of learning and growth and positive impact.
I love that. So before we move on to the last part of this deep dive,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what's stood out to you the most so far.
For me, it's the power of perspective.
Yeah.
How we choose to see our challenges can
Uh-huh.
totally change our experience.
That's huge.
And it's also about finding purpose and meaning in what we do.
Totally. Like that deeper why.
Yes. That fuels us to keep going.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
And I'd add the importance of self-awareness,
Okay. Yeah.
recognizing our triggers,
Yeah.
understanding our emotions, and being honest with ourselves about where we need to improve.
So true. It's all about self-reflection and using that to make better choices.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up this part,
Yeah.
I want to go back to that analogy of the empty mind and the venomous creatures.
Okay.
We've talked about how knowledge and positive influences are like a shield.
Right.
But what happens if those creatures have already gotten in?
Ooh, that's a good question.
It's important to remember, we're not aiming for some perfect impenetrable fortress.
Right. Life's messy.
Yeah. And those negative thoughts might still pop up sometimes.
So then what do we do when we're face to face with those venomous creatures?
First of all, don't freak out.
Okay.
Remember, you've been working on those mental muscles.
Yeah.
You have the tools to handle this. It's about recognizing those thoughts for what they are. Just thoughts. They don't control you unless you let them.
So instead of trying to ignore them,
Right.
we need to acknowledge them.
Yeah.
And then choose how we react.
Exactly. It's like having a conversation with those creatures.
Interesting.
You can say, hey, I see you, but I'm not going to let you run the show. I have a choice, and I choose to focus on something good.
It's about taking back control.
Yeah. And it might not be easy at first,
Right.
but it gets easier with practice.
And we're not alone in this.
No way. Everyone has those venomous creatures lurking in their minds.
It's part of being human.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The key is to have those healthy coping skills.
Right.
So we can stop those creatures from taking over.
So before we head into the final part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
let's take a minute to think.
Okay.
What are some specific ways you can start using these ideas in your life?
What steps, big or small, can you take to create a more positive and empowered, inner world?
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground, right? The power of perspective, channeling our energy, and building that mental shield with knowledge.
Yeah, we have.
But it's also important to remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint.
So true.
Yeah.
We're not after perfection here.
Right.
It's all about progress. Strengthening those mental and emotional muscles over time.
The rabbi used this interesting term, Torah psychology, to describe his approach.
Oh, yeah.
It's cool how he blends these ancient teachings with modern psychology.
I think it shows how universal these ideas are.
Right.
Whether we look at them from a spiritual side or a scientific one.
Yeah.
The core stuff about self-awareness, intention, and resilience,
Mhm.
they resonate across different fields.
Totally. It's like We all have this drive to understand ourselves better
For sure.
and find ways to handle life's challenges, with more grace and wisdom.
And the rabbi also emphasized that this journey isn't meant to be a solo mission.
Okay.
He talked about how important community and connection are
Right.
for supporting our growth and well-being.
He even used that analogy of a bundle of sticks.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
Individually, they're weak and easy to break,
Right.
but together they're strong and unyielding.
It's a powerful image. It reminds us we're not meant to go through this stuff alone.
Totally. Whether it's family, friends, a spiritual community,
Yeah.
even just a support group,
Uh-huh.
having those connections can make a world of difference.
So they give us that sense of belonging
For sure.
and encouragement and accountability
Right.
to help us stay on track and navigate those bumps in the road.
And sometimes just knowing that other people are going through similar stuff
Totally.
can be so reassuring and empowering.
It takes away that pressure of having to be perfect
Yeah.
or like having all the answers.
We're all just human, doing our best.
And even when we mess up,
Yeah.
the rabbi said it's not the end of the world.
Right.
It's actually a chance to learn and grow.
He compared it to a baby learning to walk.
Oh, yeah.
They fall down so many times,
They do.
but they keep getting back up and trying until they get it.
It's a great reminder that setbacks are normal when we're learning something new.
Totally. The key is to not give up.
Yeah. Just pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going.
And those setbacks often teach us things we wouldn't have learned otherwise.
Exactly. It's like those challenges are there to help us get better,
Right.
build our resilience, and become stronger and wiser.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to highlight the rabbi's main message.
Yeah.
He really pushed us to think differently about anxiety and addiction.
He did.
Instead of seeing them as personal failures,
Yeah.
he encouraged us to see them as chances for growth and understanding.
Like they're not something to be ashamed of,
Right?
but opportunities to look inward and explore and find better ways to cope with life.
And he reminded us that we all have the ability to make positive changes.
It's empowering, right?
It is. It might not be easy,
True.
but with effort and intention and the support of others,
Yeah.
we can create a life that feels more aligned, more fulfilling, more joyful.
So as we leave you today,
Yeah.
I want to invite you to think about what really resonated with you from this deep dive.
What are some things you can actually do to apply these insights to your own life?
How can you be more self-aware, use your energy, effectively build that mental shield of knowledge, and connect with people who support your growth?
Great questions.
Remember, this isn't about finding some quick fix or magic solution.
Right.
It's about embracing the journey with all its ups and downs and trusting that you have what it takes to navigate it.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
We hope it's given you some new perspectives and inspired you to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep growing.